What's up, Doc? It's Deb from Mtg. We like magic, and it turns out I didn't have any shirts with rabbits on them, so instead I just wore my favorite shirt. Now, there were 6 decks to choose from on the poll this time around, but they just couldn't help themselves. At the end of the day, my patrons were like, Bunny! So today, let's look at a deck that's hotter than Jessica Rabbit and Lola Bunny put together from a dude that knows a thing or two about hair. And you better take it seriously, for death awaits you all with nasty, big, pointy teeth!
What an eccentric performance.
And I'm your favorite Magic Channel's favorite Magic Channel. Best believe that the professor go bananas for my deck tech. And we're back. We got to go ahead and hop to it so I can make a believer out of you, because I bet you think this deck is a little bit flopsy, don't you? It's actually smoother than velveteen. You think this deck is a little bit dry, but it turns out you soggy. That was it. That was the best joke I'll ever tell on YouTube, but I do have plenty more fun bun puns where those came from, so let's go ahead and start talking about the cards in this deck, starting with the one that everyone wants to talk about, and that's Regal Bunnycorn. I like to call him Lord William. Now, the White Rabbit may not have turned out to be a chase rare, huh? See what I did there? But it did end up being quite the thumper, man. I thought this was going to be a silly rabbit when I first read it, but getting a few games in changed my mind. You know, every single non-land card in our deck, except for one of them, is a permanent card. That means this thing gets pretty big pretty quickly, especially with a relatively low curve, the ability to double spell, blah, blah, blah. You're only paying 2 mana for like a 4/4 pretty easily. If you drop it on turn 2, it grows fast, but don't forget you can drop it on turn 4 or 5 as a 5/5 or a 6/6 or whatever, and then it's kind of a problem, especially if your opponent's been a little liberal with their use of removal up to that point. If you can stick this onto the table when your opponent's low on cards, it's probably going to stay there and cause a lot of trouble. I mean, I've heard of jackrabbits, but this is a jacked rabbit, and it's the king of the bunnies in this deck, but it's not the only one that we're playing, because we're also playing Pollen Shield Hare. Now, this is a peppy hare, and it's appropriate too, because rabbits like to multiply. This is very good in multiples. That's because everybody likes extra anthem effects just laying around, unless you're some kind of weirdo. But me personally, I like Intangible Virtue on legs. It might be a little bit more fragile than Virtue is, but I'll take Intangible Virtue in standard in any form I can get it. Plus, it's got this extra little effect on it that Intangible Virtue never had. Just suck it, Intangible Virtue. This is just a single green mana for a sorcery called Hair Raising. You get it? See, Wizards is pretty good at writing puns too. I should hire them. But this is just a single mana. You know, sorcery speed sucks, whatever, who cares? But plus X for that single mana is sometimes going to be +5/+5. That's actually the easy end of it. Sometimes it'll be +9/+9. So you're not going to take anything by surprise because of the sorcery speed, but still, if you know you're going to get something through, or if you just want to force your opponent to block something they otherwise wouldn't, this is a great way of doing it. And the vigilance kind of matters too sometimes. We're also playing a 1-drop in the deck that makes hair raising actually viable some of the time for getting damage through. And let's talk about that. But first, let's talk about all the 1-drops that I tried that didn't work, because there's a ton of them that you want to play in this deck, right? You got to get a 1-drop down. The deck wants permanence in play and blah, blah, blah. I actually dispute that. I don't know that you need a 1-drop in this deck, but I came across one that was perfect. But again, that wasn't until I tried some stuff that I kind of liked. You know, Lunarch Veteran to gain some life. You got a bunch of creatures coming into play. That's cool. Sentinel Stalwart seemed okay for making mana. Didn't really pan out in the end. And then there's Crawling Chorus. I could totally see this. 2 permanents for 1 mana, but still, I didn't much care for any of these cards. At the end of the day, we settled on Skrelv, which turned out to be not settling at all. Now, first things first, do you see it yet? If you've got a Skrelv in play and you give a creature hexproof from a color and the ability to go unblocked by said color till end of turn, hair raising becomes much, much better for just pushing through, I don't know, a babillion damage like all at once. So that makes Skrelv pretty decent. But there's also the fact that people are always hunting wabbits in standard, man. You can't put a Regal Bunnycorn or Pollen Shield Hare in play without it drawing a cut down or some similar removal spell. It pretty much always happens, especially in the early turns of the game. So Skrelv can be super instrumental to this deck's gameplay, and getting it down on turn 1 and sometimes very important. And even without the help of hair raising, sometimes this just sends through a Regal Bunnycorn for like 15 damage. Who cares? You know, sometimes an entire life total worth of damage. Send that bunny boy on through for. So Skrelv just does like a million things. I don't know why you wouldn't play this card above pretty much any other 1-drop you could choose in this deck. Now, all of our buns are 2-drops, but we still need some more 2-drop. Why not? So let's play 4 copies of Gala Greeters. Mostly because I like the image, you know, I like these 2 like flapper ladies, you know, like dressed in nice clothes and stuff, standing in front of a velvet rope, inviting people to the party, like, oh, come on in. And then the camera pans down and it's just some rabbits, just letting rabbits in. So I like that image. There's a lot of funny images in this deck, at least to my mind, but that's because my mind wanders too often. Now, as far as the actual function of the card, you see we have a lot of tokens. There's a bunch of creatures in this deck. It's a little self-explanatory, right? I mean, again, this will ramp us in much the same way I wanted Sentinel Stalwart to do so, but that was bad at it. This is actually much better at it. Just don't call it by its initials. Don't play it and be like GG, because it'll really confuse a lot of your opponents. But let's move on to Wedding Announcement. 4 copies of this deck was looking cheap until we got here. I didn't realize. The Wedding Announcement was like $10, but it's definitely worth that in this deck. This makes up to 3 little ladies, and if it doesn't make them ladies, then it's drawing you cards, which is something this deck really needs. You know, I considered like Takacia's Welcome as a 1 or 2 of, didn't play it, and then I was like, oh yeah, Welcoming Vampire exists. It dies to cut down, but this deck really wants to play creatures, really wants to draw cards, and it really wants to make Banicula jokes, so that would have been pretty sweet. But in the end, I figured Wedding Announcement was just like, just better at drawing cards and at making creatures, which is all stuff the deck wants to do. Plus, you know, as previously stated, Anthem Effect good token deck. Have I actually said that in this video yet? I think I just implied it. So look, let me put it out on Front Street. Put my whole reputation on the line right here. Anthem effects are good in tokens decks. Plus, this is really good along with like Pollen Shield Hair, making your tokes way bigger. And you know I like bigger tokes. Plus, this gives us one more funny image for the deck, you know, which is basically you're invited to the wedding of Pollen Shield Hair and Regal Bunnycorn. Isn't that the cutest wedding you've ever seen? Or at least I think it would be. I ship them. Maybe it's just me. But let's move on to the 3 copies of Adeline in the deck. This is kind of a Regal Bunnycorn with extra steps, but all the extra steps are good. But I guess that's the difference between a rabbit and a horse. Wouldn't that be funny, actually? I'm going to derail the entire video for my dumb fan theory that's not real. But yeah, the whole time Adeline was actually the horse. The soldier riding it, just a normal soldier. No, Adeline is the horse, I'm telling you. But anyway, what does the card do, man? It's a pretty good card. Everybody knows it by now. It's in all the soldiers decks, mono white aggro and stuff like that for a reason. Banger of a card, but it curves really well with Regal Bunnycorn. It makes Regal Bunnycorn at least a 2/2 when it comes into play. Attacks becomes a 3/3, and the Adeline gets bigger when it makes a token. And you're just having a really good time. You know, if they stay in play for more than a turn or 2, then suddenly you got a lot of power toughness on the board and a lot of bodies for that matter. But, you know, if they just kill your Regal Bunnycorn on turn 2, that's one removal spell they don't have for the Adeline, and I think they would have much rather had it for the Adeline 9 times out of 10. So it's just a really sick card that's good on turn 3 on curve, but it's also really sweet on like turn 5, 90% of the time too. Now I'm also on 2 copies of King Darian, the XLVIII. I actually took a Latin class in high school where they taught us these things, so I'm going to give it a shot. Here's the 48th. I'm probably wrong, but you got to be willing to look dumb on the internet. I've done it plenty of times before. Either way, King Darian is gross, man. It's good. Yet another Anthem effect. I mean, how many we're going to play, right? But this also protects all of our tokens. It doesn't protect Adeline or bunnies, or it kind of sucks, but it does protect all the tokens and stuff they helped us get. With this sweet little ability, sacrifice it and all your tokens are safe from sweepers and whatnot. So also pretty ridiculous ability to have on a card. I'm only playing a couple of copies of this. I don't think it's like that impressive, but obviously these Selesnya tokens decks, and just tokens decks of any kind, are really susceptible to sweepers, which there are a bajillion of right now in standard. It doesn't protect from like Sunfall and stuff, so you're not going to get out of every situation here with this card, but it does help in a great deal of them. Moving into the 4s, we're on 3 copies of the Wandering Emperor. Yeah, there's removal in this deck. Not a whole lot of it, but this technically counts, but it also makes a whole bunch of tokes. That's good. It bridges the gap in the mid game a lot of the time, because there's going to be some games where you're like, oh crap, I'm about to die. I need to remove that thing. It's going to attack me and then I'll die. So Wandering Emperor is really good in those situations. You've been there, I'm sure, a few times, but it's also really sweet even if you're ahead. Like, sure, I'll just make a few more tokens, block here, attack there. They got vigilance, whatever, making my Bunnycorn bigger. They get bigger with the intangible virtue, you know, the Pollen Shield Hair or whatever. So just Wandering Emperor just kind of does it all. And yeah, you're not going to be fooling anybody when you pass 4 open mana into your opponent's turn, but, you know, we've already learned over the last couple of years at this point that, like, just because they know you have it doesn't mean they can do a whole heck of a lot about it. So Wandering Emperor is just a powerful card in a vacuum, and it's even more powerful in a deck like this. But I'm actually not out of 4 mana Planeswalkers yet. We needed something in this deck to bust through. We got to break on through to the other side. So I tried a few different things. You know, I tried Nissa, but it just cost too much, and we don't have all that green mana. And it seems like it would be good. It's not. And then I tried to get Slick with Glorious Sunrise in the sideboard, but it's just not. You always think it's going to be good, and it's just not very good. But it turns out the thing that did stick in this slot and hard was Archangel Elspeth, mostly because of the second ability. It takes a couple of loyalty, whatever, but +2/+2 and give Regal Bunnycorn some hops until end of turn so it can get in there. You can do the same thing with Pollen Shield Hair, just cast Hair Raising, make a token like a 7/7 or something, and then give it flying, slam in for 9, or it's just ridiculous. Some of the stuff this can do while also having the ability to generate tokens while plussing. So I'm telling you, I haven't seen too many lists on Regal Bunnycorn running this card. I've seen all kinds of wild stuff. I've seen Boros bunnies, Selesnya bunnies, Bant bunnies, Storm the Festival, which I actually did reasonably good at like a 35-person tournament at top 8. So, like, I've seen all kinds of builds. I've done Orzhov rabbits, which I'm a fan of. It's a cool deck, but you get to play awesome cards in that deck. Anyway, if you're going to play this, if you're going to play this deck, well, actually, if you're going to play just about any of them, you have to play white. I think you should try out Archangel Elspeth if you haven't yet. This is probably one of the better, like, thinking back to all the games, like, yeah, this is probably the thing that got me out of trouble, like, the most next to the Wandering Emperor. So this can either finish a game quick or keep you in it. Now, I'm also on 3 Virtue of Loyalty. It does fill out the 2-drop slots slightly more, but I don't care that much about the 2-drop half of this card. I mean, I guess it's instant speed, makes a token. Deck likes tokens, right? Sometimes makes a 3/3 when you got Pollen Shield Hair out. That's about all there really is to it, though. The other half of this card costs 5 mana and fills out that half of our curve, wins us the game. Especially getting multiples, just absolutely dumb, but you really usually don't need more than one of these in a turn or two to win the game. Also want to point out how fan-freaking-tastic this card is with just like Planeswalkers. Like your opponent can sweep you all they want to. They can Farewell, they can Sunfall, I don't care. If I have an Archangel Elspeth and or Wandering Emperor out with this Virtue in play, then suddenly I'm making a 2/2, I'm making a 1/1. It doesn't seem that big of a deal, but suddenly it's 2/2 comes 3/3, the 1 becomes 2/2 lifelink, right? Next turn, 3/3 lifelink, 4/4 token with Vigilance from the Wandering Emperor. So like things really add up quickly, and their sweepers don't do a whole lot about it if you can just get one token out, and it's not that hard to do that in this deck, but with our Planeswalkers, or just drawing into them. So this card just unbelievable, whether you're in like a stalemate against aggro or mid-range or something, or your opponent's playing an abundance of sweepers, because just getting one guy out constitutes a threat no matter what it is. There's a couple more non-creatures in the deck. Again, we're playing some removal. We're bringing it all the way up to 6 removal pieces. With 3 copies of Ossification. Look, we're trying to stalemate the game a little bit. We got a bunch of little nerdy tokens laying around and stuff, so we're blocking, we're chumping, we're having a fine time. We're extending the game, blah, blah, blah. We don't need that much removal in this deck compared to some other decks because we block for weeks, months, some would say. So it's fine. 6 removal spells in the main deck, not a big deal. And this one gets to stay in play, so it counts for like Regal Bunnycorn, makes it a little bit bigger and stuff. So if you're going to play one removal spell in this entire deck, sans Wandering Emperor, I think it's probably this one. Also helps you take out Planeswalkers if it matters to you, and it probably does. But we got 1 slot left in this thing, so let's fill it with Tyar Stand. Yet another way to break through. We got Archangel Elspeth to do it, Skrelv to help get through combat damage, and finally, main deck. We got more in the sideboard, but main deck, let's throw in a Tyar Stand. Sometimes your opponent is going to try to target a rabbit or something like that when you swing in with it. And then you can make Tyar Stand take their situation from bad to just game losing. It's like, oh, you tried to go for the throated now that it's coming in? Cool, I'll just Tyar Stand, it tramples over for 1,000 damage. So I'm pretty sure you lose. Are you at 1,000 life? So yeah, like Tyar Stand, you could make the argument this could be more than just a 1-of in the deck, but then I'd counter with the fact that it is, because remember, it's best of 3. We have 75 cards in our deck. We'll get to it in just a second, but I really wanted to work in at least one main deck copy of this card, especially what with all the cut downs, go for the throats and stuff just flying around in standard right now. Cheap removal has never been as abundant, it feels like, as it is right at this moment. So really nice to have a thing like Tyar Stand. For as little as 1 mana, protect that important investment, your Regal Bunnycorn or whatever. And for more mana, or not even, you can still do it for 1 mana. Just give that Bunnycorn trample and get on over for like 17. Super easy. Now you think this deck tech would be over, but it just keeps going and going. We got to look at the lands real quick. 24 of them, 19 white sources, 16 green sources. Should be more than enough green to get the job done, and almost enough white to always get the job. I really would like a 20th white source in this deck somewhere, but I also don't want to take out the Mirex because it's good. You see how the card is good? That's why I don't want to take it out of the deck. Let's beat the sideboard real quick, because this is actually incredibly important to this deck. I think this is way more of a best of 3 deck than it is a best of 1 deck. Even though tokens decks tend to thrive in best of 1 from time to time, I really think you need your sideboard slots to shore things up here. So let's look at the 3 copies of Invasion of Gobakhan to start things off with. This is obviously just protect from sweepers. We need more ways of protecting from sweepers, but this also makes attacking creatures bigger turn over turn, doing a little impression of Virtue of Loyalty sometimes. So obviously sweet card here, and keeps our opponent off of sweepers on that front half too. Surge of Salvation is in here as well. Just the 1 mana blow your opponent out thing, especially against red decks, obviously, and against black decks for that matter. There's a bunch of those in standard. So Surge of Salvation, yes, at least a 2 of, maybe should be more, but there's 2 more Tyar Stands. This is against those decks, mostly with swamps in them, but can also be very good against mono red when timed correctly. And it kind of doesn't even have to be, but especially if you're, countering, quote unquote, a play with fire or lightning strike, while also sending Regal Bunnycorn over for 12. That feels all right, but there's a lot of matchups those 2 extra copies of Stand will come in for. There's also Destroy Evil, kill Sheoldreds, and bigger stuff like that, but also blows up enchantment. Seems like a nice card to have access to. Agatha's Soul Cauldron, a couple of these, didn't realize it was $42, so you could just play unlicensed Hearse if you wanted to, but Hearse is still like $10, but that's, it's better than 40. But there's some cool tricks in this deck with Soul Cauldron, namely that you can say exile a King Darien from your yard, and then suddenly all your creatures with +1/+1 counters have the ability to sack to protect your tokens. Probably even better though is the fact that all your guys with +1/+1 counters can get Skrelv's ability, which can get like very out of hand very fast. So I think it's probably better to play Agatha's Soul Cauldron in here than like Hearse or something, but there's other ways you can use these slots if you want. But Soul Cauldron is a card, man. There's also Aloran of the Third Path. This can just, blow up stuff, but also kind of combos with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. All your guys with counters can tap to draw a card. I mean, everybody draws a card, but hey, seems fine. There's also 2 Sword of Once and Future. I've already gone on about how good this is in this format in the Rats Deck Tech this season. I just want to double down here, man. It turns out if you're playing a small, furry, like rodent creature, and this is probably the best card you could be playing, but I think that's actually not dependent on playing small creatures and stuff. I think almost any deck can probably make some use of this because blue and black is such a strong color combination in the current format. But aside from that, there's a single copy of that Elish Norn there against aggro decks. But oh boy, that was I try to make a different noise every time I'm transitioning into a coffee break. Ooh boy, that was quite the long sideboard discussion and very important to have. But that means that I think before we get into the power rankings, before we finish things up, shake hands, hug, go home, and think about each other till we meet again, maybe we should sit down right now, take some time to ourselves, have a nice little coffee break. Can you tell there's nothing in this mug because I keep going, hey, what if we did this? Let's have a nice little coffee break. This week on the coffee break, it's all the cards I didn't play in this deck because there are quite a lot of them, and I'm sure I'll get questions about them. First of all, I should say that I found Mondrak to be whack. Although on paper I do appreciate the combo with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. At the end of the day, this card was just not as impactful as our other 4-drops, and we had to drop it for concerns of curve. Speaking of cards that I cut because they were bad, we also tried out Queen Alanal, Skrelv's Hive, and Awake in the Woods, all of which I found to be substandard. It turned out I would rather play Resolute Reinforcements than Skrelv's Hive, and we didn't even end up playing Resolute Reinforcements. Finally, the 2 most promising cards that we tried, but cut anyway, were 3 Blind Mice and Rabble Rousing. Now, as Deb previously mentioned, there was a Storm the Festival deck playing the bunnies that did fairly well in an early tournament this season. That deck was also playing Rabble Rousing. We didn't end up on this card, but I could see how it could be not only good, but extremely fun to play. I have to say, however, that 3 Blind Mice was ultimately my favorite card that didn't make the final cut. At the end of the day, I felt that the deck could not have too many more 3-drops in it than we currently have, and it was a very difficult choice between this and King Darien. But in the end, I feel we did make the right decision. That is all for the coffee break this week. I'm sorry there weren't too many jokes this time, but I'm sure that Deb has a few more. Here he is. Oh crap, I'm on the spot now. I need rabbit jokes. Tell you what, the other day when I Googled a joke on camera, somebody in the comments said that I should just always do that. So, rabbit jokes. Let's Google a joke, see what we get. Big list of rabbit and bunny jokes. That's not even a rabbit joke. How do you catch a unique rabbit? Unique up on it. That's so dumb. What's their favorite music? Hip hop. All right, so let's look at your power rankings for this one and just casually introduced half a point. Let's just do that. Sure, it's been 8 years on YouTube. We've never done this, but I felt like this is a deck that broke me. Here's half a point ratings. The most impactful thing in the history of the channel. Not really, but it's still. What's the final score? Now that we have to add half points, it's a little more difficult. 65.5. Oh, I think I actually found a good one on this webpage, believe it or not. What do you call a group of rabbits hopping backwards? A receding hairline. But that's actually not bad. I know a thing or two about that. But anyway, that's all we got for this one. Thanks for joining us. Remember, check out Patreon. It's just $1 a month. Helps out the channel a lot. And it'll let you vote on what decks we do. We've already done rats. When we've done rabbits, who knows what's going to be next? Mongoose? Is that mongoose? Is mongoose the plural of mongoose, or is it mongooses? Is it mongeese? It's mongooses or mongeese. It's either one of them. I was right 2 out of 3 times. But anyway, boom. Let's wrap it up, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't done that yet. I would really appreciate it. You don't have to. You don't have to tell anybody you didn't do it, but it doesn't cost you anything. Just a little arm movement. Contribute to the old carpal tunnel a little bit, but we're doing that every day. So let's do the couch card of the day. And wouldn't it be funny if we pulled Evan Pryder? Wouldn't that be the best pull ever? But I thought we were going to do that. Let's see what we get from over here. What is this? What is this card? Who are you? Ooh, it's an Urza, Prince of Krug. This actually came in as part of the I spent $5 on the Brothers War video, and it immediately hit the couch and never came off. It's a 4 mana, 2 white, blue, 2/3 legendary human artificer. Artifact creatures you control get +2/+2. I was talking about double anthem effects earlier. They're pretty good. You can pay 6 to create a token that's a copy of target artifact you control, except it's a 1/1 soldier creature in addition to its other types. An extremely good commander. It's such a good commander. So cool. It's a good commander. But anyway, good. That's probably the best couch card we pulled in a good long time, actually. Hey, everybody. It's the end of the video, and I just thought we needed a change of scenery. Not really. For some reason, the audio on my microphone cut out for the last 40 seconds of the recording. I don't know why. I'm not annoyed at all, though. It's just that I started editing the video at 3:30 in the morning, and now it's 10 o'clock in the morning. So that's not that big of a deal, actually. All I really have to do now is tell you goodbye. We did the couch card, Patreon stuff, like, subscribe, the whole deck tech. We had fun. We danced and sang all night. So I'm just glad that you guys are here. Do all the YouTube stuff if you get a chance on your way out, and let me know what bunny jokes I missed down there in the comments section. And if there's anything I didn't bring up during the coffee break I didn't play that you would have, interested in that stuff too. But for now, I'm going to get out of here and finish editing this video. Finally, it'll be up at some point tonight, I assume. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.